the maiden ghost hitchhiker of Chippewa Falls.
The headlights cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the barren road ahead. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white with tension. Driving at night always made me uneasy, but tonight was different. It was a moonless night, and the stars seemed to be swallowed by an unseen force. I was on a desolate highway, miles away from civilization. The only company I had was the rhythmic hum of the engine and the haunting whistling of the wind. A thick fog crept in from the edges of the road, reducing visibility to a mere few feet. It felt as though the road was leading me into an abyss, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. My phone's GPS had been acting up, and the map showed no signs of civilization nearby. I pressed on, hoping that soon I would reach a gas station or a motel where I could rest for the night. But the road seemed endless, stretching further into the black void. Suddenly my headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. My heart leapt into my throat as I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop just inches from the person. I looked out through the windshield, my breath hitched. A woman in a tattered, blood-stained dress stood before me, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "Please," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo, "help me." Fear surged through my veins, but my compassion got the better of me. I unlocked the doors, and she climbed into the back seat without saying a word. The scent of decay filled the car, making me cringe. I glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed that her reflection didn't match her appearance. Her skin was pale and rotting, her eyes hollow sockets. I tried to turn the car around, but the wheels only spun in the mud. Panic engulfed me as I realized that I was stuck in the middle of nowhere with a sinister presence inside my car. The woman in the back seat turned her head, her neck making an unnatural cracking sound. "Keep driving," she hissed, and I felt compelled to obey. The car lurched forward, and I prayed for a way out of this nightmare. The fog thickened around us, distorting the road ahead. I could barely make out the white lines, and the headlights seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. Every now and then I caught glimpses of figures on the periphery of my vision, shadowy figures with glowing eyes that vanished when I looked directly at them. The woman in the back seat began whispering in a language I couldn't understand. Her voice grew louder, filling the car with an eerie chant that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to block out the sound, but it felt as though her words were seeping into my mind, clouding my thoughts. As we continued down the desolate highway, I noticed strange symbols painted on the asphalt. They seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and the air felt heavy with an otherworldly presence. The car's radio crackled to life, emitting a series of distorted voices and static. I glimpsed at the clock, but the numbers seemed to blur together, and the passage of time became a blur. It felt like I'd been driving for an eternity, with no end in sight. Suddenly the car jolted to a stop, the engine sputtering and dying. Panic gripped me as I tried to restart it, but it was no use. The woman in the back seat chuckled, her voice sending chills down my spine. "You can't leave," she said, her voice now distorted and filled with malice. "You're trapped here with us." I opened the car door, ready to make a run for it, but as I stepped outside, I found myself back inside the car, the door closing on its own. It was as though the road had swallowed me whole, trapping me in an endless loop of despair. The figures with glowing eyes surrounded the car, their grotesque forms pressing against the windows. The woman in the back seat laughed maniacally, and the symbols on the road glowed brighter, illuminating the darkness around us. In a last-ditch effort to escape, I closed my eyes and...
Whispers of the Coven, a chilling tale of 3 witches. I never should have taken that isolated road at night. The darkness enveloped me, and my headlights seemed powerless against the thick fog. My heart pounded as I sensed an eerie presence, as if someone was watching from the shadows. Suddenly, figures appeared on the roadside, their silhouettes illuminated by my dim headlights. They wore tattered robes and pointed hats. Witches! Panic surged through me, and I sped up, hoping to outrun them. But they were faster. They glided effortlessly alongside my car, their haunting cackles filling the night. My breath hitched as their faces contorted into ghastly masks. They chanted in an ancient tongue, their voices growing louder and more malevolent. Terrified, I reached for my phone, desperate to call for help. But the signal was dead, leaving me trapped in their wicked game. The witch's eyes bore into mine, and I felt a searing pain in my chest. They were casting a spell, draining the life from me. I struggled to breathe, my vision blurring. With every passing second, the world around me transformed. The road stretched endlessly, leading me deeper into their sinister realm. Familiar landmarks disappeared, replaced by gnarled trees and flickering jack-o'-lanterns. I pleaded with them to let me go, but their laughter echoed in my ears, drowning out my cries. The witches reveled in my fear, relishing every moment of my torment. As I drove, I caught glimpses of other trapped souls in the witches' grasp. Their hollow eyes pleaded for release, a haunting reminder of what awaited me. Suddenly, a massive oak tree loomed ahead, its branches forming a sinister arch over the road. The witch's chant grew louder, urging me to pass through. I had no choice, no escape. As I drove beneath the twisted branches, an icy wind engulfed me. I felt an invisible force pulling at my very soul, trying to claim me as their own. In that chilling moment, I summoned every ounce of strength I had left. I screamed at the top of my lungs, a primal cry of defiance. The witch's grip wavered, and the fog began to lift. The arching branches retreated, and the road ahead cleared. Gasping for breath, I realized I had broken their spell, but the witches weren't done with me yet. Their haunting cackles lingered in the air, a chilling reminder of the night's horrors. I drove on, my heart still racing, unsure if I would ever truly escape their grasp. The ghosts of those wicked witches would forever haunt my nightmares, a reminder of the horrors that lurked in the darkness. And so, I'll never forget that fateful night. The night I encountered ghostly witches on that treacherous road, an experience that forever changed me. I'll forever be haunted by the witches who showed me the true terror of driving at night. Desert Nightmare, a terrifying tale of the chupacabra. The desert night was unforgiving as I drove alone through the desolate expanse. The headlights of my car cut through the darkness, but the vastness seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing me whole. I was on a remote road, far away from any signs of civilization. A chill ran down my spine as I thought about the legends surrounding these arid lands. They said that something sinister roamed these deserts, something that preyed on the unsuspecting. My unease grew with every mile I covered. The silence was deafening, broken only by the howling wind and the occasional rustle of dry leaves. But then, an eerie cry pierced through the night, a blood-curdling screech that sent shivers down my spine. My heart pounded as I glanced around, trying to locate the source of the chilling sound. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I saw a pair of glowing eyes in my rearview mirror. Panic surged through me as I realized I was not alone. The creature behind me was unlike anything I had ever seen, a grotesque mix of a wild dog and a mythical beast. Its fur was matted and dark, and its body seemed emaciated, as if it had survived in this barren landscape against all odds. It was the dreaded chupacabra, the infamous creature from folklore known for draining the blood of its victims. I pressed my foot on the gas, hoping to outrun the malevolent creature. But as I sped up, the chupacabra matched my pace effortlessly, its eyes never leaving me. Fear gnawed at my sanity, and I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my hands trembling. The creature emitted another bone-chilling screech, as if taunting me, reveling in my terror. My rational mind told me to drive faster, to escape this nightmare. But I knew there was no escape from this relentless predator. As the desert landscape blurred by, I frantically searched for any signs of life, any place where I could find safety. But there was nothing, just the vast emptiness of the desert, a stark reminder of my isolation. Desperation set in, and I tried to call for help, but my phone showed no signal. I was truly alone, at the mercy of the chupacabra. Suddenly the creature leapt forward, its sharp claws scraping against the metal of my car. My heart raced as I swerved to avoid it, but the chupacabra was relentless in its pursuit. It was toying with me, enjoying the chase. As I rounded a bend, I saw a distant light, a small desert motel. My only hope of survival lay in reaching it. I pushed my car to its limits, the engine roaring in protest. With the motel in sight, I thought I had a chance. But the chupacabra was determined to stop me. It lunged at my car, teeth bared and eyes glowing with malice. In a desperate move, I swerved off the road, hoping to throw it off my trail. The car skidded across the sandy terrain and I crashed into a sand dune, the impact jolting me. As I regained my bearings, I looked around, praying that the chupacabra had lost interest. But my heart sank when I saw the creature emerging from the darkness, its thirst for blood undiminished. With no other option, I abandoned the car and ran towards the motel. My breath was ragged, and the desert sand slowed my progress. The motel seemed impossibly far away, and the chupacabra closed in, its heavy footsteps echoing behind me. I reached the motel's entrance, gasping for breath, and pounded on the door. A sleepy-eyed motel clerk opened it, looking puzzled. Before I could explain, the chupacabra's horrifying silhouette appeared in the distance. With a strength born of desperation, I pushed my way inside, slamming the door shut. The clerk's expression changed from confusion to shock as he saw the creature outside. With a trembling voice, I begged him to call for help. He nodded, finally understanding the danger we were in. As he dialed the number, the motel's lights flickered and the power went out. The room plunged into darkness, leaving us vulnerable. The motel clerk hurriedly lit a lantern, but the dim glow only cast elongated shadows on the walls, heightening our fear. We could hear the chupacabra scratching at the door, its guttural growls resonating through the wood. It knew we were trapped and was relishing the moment. As the minutes stretched into eternity, we waited, praying for salvation. The chupacabra's assault on the door intensified, and I could feel it closing in on us. Just when hope seemed lost, distant sirens wailed in the distance. The creature hesitated, and its malevolent presence waned. The sound of approaching police cars forced the chupacabra to retreat into the desert, disappearing into the night. The relief was overwhelming, but the terror of that night would stay with me forever. I had faced the legendary chupacabra and lived to tell the tale. From that day on, I never drove through the desert at night again, for I knew that some horrors were best left undisturbed in the darkness.